Two states of Malaysia are not quite like the rest. Sabah and Sarawak lie on the island of Borneo, divided from peninsular Malaysia by the South China Sea. And there is more that separates them beyond geography.
We look at ourselves as an autonomous region within a bigger grouping.
The founding document of Malaysia, the Malaysia Agreement of 1963, gives Sabah and Sarawak more autonomy than other 11 states, which many East Malaysians say have not been upheld for decades.
Over time, some of our rights that has been promised has been eroded. That we cannot deny.
Now, as East Malaysian parties gain more clout and push for funds and independence,
we don't ask for more, we don't ask for less. Just give us what you promised us.
will it create a rift in Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's government? Mount Kinabalu stands majestic as Sabah's most famous landmark. But for many Sabahans, the splendor of nature belies the underdevelopment in their state. Driving along unpaved roads has become a daily routine for 55-year-old farmer Igim Sudin. He lives in a Wallo village in Ranau, about 3 hours' drive from the capital, Kota Kinabalu.
Masalah yang sering kali penduduk hadapi ketika banyak lubang-lubang bagi mereka yang punya kendaraan, ini menyebabkan gangguan ataupun kerusakan pada kendaraan-kendaraan yang digunakan pakai.
Paving works have only recently begun on the routes linking various villages and towns. The 230 residents of this village have also spent years without amenities like piped water.
Contohnya, saudara yang berada dekat sini, rumah dekat di sini, mereka menggunakan tedahan pipe air dari anak sungai. Memang kalau dipikirkan, penduduk akan menghadapi masalah yang dari segi kesehatan. Karena tadahan pipe yang diusahakan penduduk kampung tidak sistematik dan tidak bertapis.
Wallo village is a reminder of how development in Sabah has lagged behind the rest of the nation.
You can see for yourself whether our development is on par with the rest of the states and what is lacking. Frequent electricity cut, water cut, internet cut.
According to the data from the Malaysian Public Works Department, almost half of Sabah's roads are in need of major upgrades.
Now, infrastructure is still very poor. Many rural districts are still not paved, and even if they are, it does not reach out to the kebun-kebun land and so on, and therefore the land becomes dormant, inactivated.
So you fly to Kuala Lumpur, you see better roads, better buildings, better everything, you know. And this compared to your home state in Tambunan, why have potholes, why don't have water, why don't have electricity?
Malaysia is a federation of 13 states and 3 federal territories. 11 states make up Peninsular Malaysia, while Sabah and Sarawak on the island of Borneo form East Malaysia. Sabah is the poorest state in Malaysia with a poverty rate of 17.7%. Sarawak, with a poverty rate of 8.4%, is fourth after Kelantan and Kedah. Jeffrey Kittingan, a prominent Sabah politician, points to the disparity in funds from the federal government as a reason for East Malaysia's underdevelopment.
8 of the poorest districts in Malaysia in Sabah. And then we are the sickest. Most people are sick here because we lack the health infrastructure.
There's a reason for people in Sabah and neighbouring Sarawak to feel hard done by the lack of development. Many consider their states to hold a special status within the Federation.
We look at ourselves as autonomous region within a bigger grouping, and we don't have the same status as the other states in Malaysia, meaning the 11 states are lower rank in terms of certain privileges and laws compared to Sabah and Sarawak. Okay.
What's at the heart of this contention is a 60-year-old document, one which has received renewed attention in the last few years. The document at the root of Malaysia's founding. It's July 9th, 1963. On that day, leaders of Sabah, then known as North Borneo, Sarawak, Singapore and Malaya, signed what is known as the Malaysia Agreement, or MA63. With effect from September 16 of 1963, these 4 former British colonies would form a new nation, Malaysia.
The general consensus through historical readings is the pressure brought upon by Indonesia and Philippines in terms of taking over this territory. So Philippines, as you know, exerted claims that Sabah belongs to them, and Indonesia's confrontation shows a greater disagreement of Malaysia expanding to Sabah and Sarawak.
So the idea then was that it's good for us to be part of this larger federation because we can be assured of our security.
Barely 2 years into the formation of Malaysia, the young federation was jolted by an unexpected turn of events. Deep political rifts culminated in Singapore's exit from the federation on August 9th, 1965.
You know, every time we look back on this moment when we signed this agreement which severed Singapore from Malaysia, it will be a moment of anguish.
When Singapore was no longer part of the federation, so the leaders in Sabah and Sarawak felt like they were being betrayed in a way.
It's a surprise, it's a shock. They never consulted us, because if they consulted us, maybe we would like to live the same time as Singapore. That was the Malayan sphere, I think. And then there will be no Malaysia, right?
Nonetheless, Sabah and Sarawak leaders stayed the course and remained with Malaysia. Sabah agreed to join the federation under a list of conditions known as the 20-point agreement. Sarawak similarly had an 18-point memorandum. These conditions were meant to safeguard the autonomy of these two territories. They were later incorporated into the Malaysia Agreement. For example, the two states would have special rights in key areas such as religion, language, and immigration, among other areas of autonomy.
They were given added privileges or entitlements on various things, from immigration to finance to public service to education, language, a number of things.
So, rather than becoming another constituent state, Sabah and Sarawak considered themselves equal partners to Malaya.
The idea of equal partnership is that when we enter into this federation, Sabah and Sarawak are two regional components as opposed to Malaya as another component. So basically Malaysia consisting of 3 big regions, Malaya, Sabah and Sarawak. So that was at least that was in the thinking or in the mind of many people in Sabah and Sarawak.
However, The idea of equal partnership was not explicitly stated in the agreement. Instead, it was an interpretation of how the 4 territories were classified in the agreement, where Sabah and Sarawak is separate from the other states of Peninsular Malaysia.
With all respect, the MA63 does not speak of equal partnership. Okay, and what the MA63 does reflect is the product of discussions and negotiations which gave Sabah and Sarawak more entitlement than the other states of Malaysia. I have some difficulty in accepting this idea of an equal partnership because it would mean then you have 3 countries in one federation, one country is itself a federation, and these 3 powers share, which isn't what the Constitution provides for, nor is it what had been in place from 63 all the way until this issue first came up.
Later, a 1976 constitutional amendment clarified the status of Sabah and Sarawak. The amendment listed all the Malaysia states and included Sabah and Sarawak among them.
That means we became state number 12 and Sarawak became state number 13. The implication is that we're just one of the states under Malaya.
For most people in Sabah and Sarawak, they think that that is an attempt to dilute our status in the federation.
The 1976 amendment went largely unchallenged at that time. It was passed with 130 votes in favour and only 9 against. Most representatives from Sabah and Sarawak supported the bill.
I go back to history. Communist threat in the 60s, riots 1969, 70s political instability, and then the communist threat was still there. So I think maybe the leaders of Sabah and Sarawak at that time, through their understanding and trust of the leaders of Barisan Nasional from the peninsular side at that time, decided that maybe they should focus more on unity. And when you have unity as a whole country, you have political stability. When you have political stability, you can focus on developing the country.
Sarawak was a little backward back then. We are just a small state, so maybe the focus is development, not really thinking of rights or legal rights. What more to say legal rights, you know?
You must remember they were in Parliament at the time, right? And they participated. So what is unfair now may have not been seen as unfair before. Otherwise, why would they have agreed from the get-go?
So, why do some now claim the application of MA63 is unfair? And why is it causing disquiet in Sabah and Sarawak? It's August 31st, Malaysia Day. This year marked the 68th anniversary of Malaysia's independence, a day of pride for the entire nation. But here in Sabah, the date also commemorates Sabah Day, when the state gained freedom from British colonial rule in 1963.
Yang sebenarnya Hari Sabah ini kita merdeka sendiri.
Sempena sambutan Hari Sabah sejak tahun lepas, harapan kami sebagai rakyat Sabah, semoga Sabah tepat dengan slogan katanya lah, Sabah maju jaya.
Kalau pendapat saya, dia well developed juga tapi tidak merata. Ada sesetengah sudah maju betul, ada sesetengah masih belum lagi.
In parts of Sabah, the electrical infrastructure is lacking. So locals have taken to installing solar panels for their energy needs.
Blackout lah begitu ya. Dalam 1 minggu dia akan berlaku dalam 3 kali ataupun 4 kali, dan itu menyebabkan gangguan yang sangat memberi kesan yang buruk lah buat para pengguna. Dan pernah juga blackout ini terjadi sehingga 1 hari.
Many other areas like the water problems, lingering water problem. Till now, we have electricity and power problems, and therefore this affect the whole economic development because we need investment to come in, and investors need power, water, and so on in order to implement their investment.
But change may be coming to both Sabah and Sarawak. Under the National Budget 2025, the Borneo states of Sabah and Sarawak will receive 12.6 billion ringgit in the developmental expenditure, 6.7 billion for Sabah and 5.9 billion for Sarawak. This is among the highest budgets out of all states.
Look at the bigger picture. Sabah and Sarawak today, because of they are starting from lower base, they have the best potential. So we should allocate more resources to them. It is not about quotas, it's not about demanding this and that. It's about allocating resources so that Sabah and Sarawak can benefit from their low economic base today and actually become the next economic engine for Malaysia. And then everybody else will benefit.
Still, Sabah Deputy Chief Minister Jeffrey Kittingan hopes for more.
So every year we only get 6 to 7% of the total development budget. So who is getting the bulk? It's developing the Semenanjung states. We are behind. We will fall further behind because we are not getting the development push and the development budget to develop our economy.
There's reason why some in Sabah and Sarawak feel shortchanged. Both states are resource-rich, endowed with abundant oil, timber, and other natural resources. In the Constitution, Sabah is supposed to receive at least 40% of what it contributes to federal revenue above its 1963 level.
So in a very simple terms, if Sabah collected 100 ringgit in taxes, approximately 40 ringgit is supposed to be sent back to the state. Because at that time, it was widely understood that Sabah was a very poor state, especially in terms of infrastructure, and that they needed the money to build the state out.
But in a ruling by the Kota Kinabalu High Court this year, the federal government was judged to have failed to honour Sabah's 40% share of federal revenue for nearly 5 decades.
Since the 1970s, the federal government has never remitted the amount back to Sabah. And that is part of the overall picture of the marginalization of Sabah and Sarawak.
The autonomy granted to Sabah and Sarawak under MA63 was also gradually withdrawn.
Over time, some of our rights that has been promised, that has been agreed upon during the formation of Malaysia has been eroded. That we cannot deny.
They are supposed to have the highest level of political and economic autonomy in the Malaysian Federation. Unfortunately, during the rule of Mahathir, he believed in a strong centralized federal state. So he took away a lot of the administrative power that is supposed to be held by the Sabah and Sarawak state governments.
Another point of contention is the issue of oil royalties. Malaysia is the second largest oil producer in Southeast Asia and the world's 5th largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. Sabah holds around 1/5 of Malaysia's petroleum reserves. Sarawak has over 60%. Sarawak and Sabah currently receive 5% of Malaysia's oil and gas revenue. The rest goes to the federal government, or the cost recovery and profit line of Malaysia's state oil company, Petronas. Petronas has exclusive ownership right over oil and gas exploration and production in the country. Now, both Sabah and Sarawak are demanding a bigger slice of Malaysia's oil wealth, from the current 5% to 20%.
the oil resources belongs to us, all right, comes from our own ground and our own shores. Surely we deserve more in terms of development funds than the rest.
The 5% oil royalty for both Sabah and Sarawak was established under the Petroleum Development Act. The agreement was reached between the federal government and the two states on October 1st, 1974.
The Petroleum Development Act establishes something called Petronas and says that the states of Malaysia, including Sabah Sarawak, can sign vesting instruments to vest ownership of oil in the corporation. And the percentage was fixed in those agreements, and it's 5%, I believe. Why wasn't this raised any earlier? Is it only in 2016 that it became inequitable? I don't know.
Remember, when MA63 was formed, oil was not found yet in Sabah. By the way, which company developed the oil resources in Sabah? Petronas. If Petronas put the investment in, then oil wouldn't be produced in Sabah. So I go back again to negotiations, and better it's done behind the scenes so that it doesn't create a situation of divisiveness.
But such a reallocation of hydrocarbon earnings may be difficult. About a fifth of Malaysia's federal revenue comes from oil and gas. The central government is dependent on it to fund its budget. And to give Sabah and Sarawak a 20% share would put a sizable dent in its coffers.
I think where the angle comes from is that even though on paper it looks quite fair that resources should be shared across the federation, the fact that Sabah and Sarawak are so far behind in terms of development, many people feel that the other side, Malay side, got too much out of these oil and gas resources.
To say that Sabah and Sarawak people did not benefit from being part of Malaysia is not true. They developed. It's just not as a fast pace as the development of Peninsular Malaysia.
Now, calls to restore the original terms of MA63 have grown loud in East Malaysia. In October 2023, a group of 10 activists from Sabah and Sarawak announced the intention to challenge the validity of MA63 before the International Court of Justice, or the ICJ. But to date, the plan hasn't been fully materialized.
I don't think the ICJ has jurisdiction over something of a dispute like this, given that Sabah and Sarawak are actually part of our territory, or the Federation of Malaysia, and there is a constitutional arrangement. And as a litigator, I'll say that courts are the last place you want to go to, because there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. I think you want to try and resolve it through constructive dialogue, but there has to be a baseline in terms of expectations and fairness.
Nonetheless, resolving MA63 has become a priority for the current administration. Why? For decades, Malaysia was ruled by the Barisan Nasional Coalition, with its largest constituent party, UMNO, or the United Malays National Organisation. During this time, Sabah and Sarawak were viewed as reliable vote banks for BN.
Basically, under Mahathir Mohamad, I made a very strong argument that he did not really care about Sabah and Sarawak for the very simple reason that he used to call Sabah and Sarawak fixed deposit. So in terms of Sarawak, he understood that Sarawak was under a strongman called Taib Mahmud. And Taib Mahmud made it very clear to Mahathir that as long as you do not interfere in Sarawak affairs, I will support you at the federal level.
Everybody is focused on trying to build Sarawak up, to work with the federal government because they are stronger. So that is the focus. And because of that, along the way, Along the way, our rights are taken over by the federal government without we knowing it.
Meanwhile, those who asserted Sabah and Sarawak's rights faced censure. Jeffrey Kittingan was detained under the Internal Security Act, or ISA, for 3 years in 1991 for pushing greater autonomy for Sabah.
At that time, everybody was afraid of ISA because they can just take you if you open your mouth against the federal government or just to express the rights of Sabah.
The political landscape began to shift following the departure of Dr. Mahathir Mohamad as Prime Minister in 2003. Under Dr. Mahathir's successor, Abdullah Badawi, Barisan Nasional eventually lost his 2/3 majority in 2008. Najib Razak, the next Prime Minister, failed to recapture the supermajority. In the 2013 election, BN won just 133 of 222 seats. 47 of BN seats were won in East Malaysia, demonstrating how instrumental the territories were to Najib's hold on power.
Without the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak in 2008, UMNO would not have been able to hang on to power. So when Najib came into power in 2009, he understood immediately the wind was shifting below his feet, and in order to stay in power, he had to move or grant some concessions to Sabah and Sarawak.
Then, in May 2018 general election, things would change again. The once mighty BN coalition suffered a historic collapse, hurt by the fallout from the 1MDB corruption scandal. It won just 79 out of the 222-seat parliament. The Pakatan Harapan coalition, led by Mahathir Mohamad, won the election with 113 parliamentary seats, barely enough seats to form the government. To shore up its position, PH allied with the smaller parties from Sabah and Sarawak.
2018 is a turning point because at that time the dominance of Malaysia Nasional in the federal government was broken, and they had to rely on Sabah and Sarawak to form the government, and we together with Sabah formed the Borneo Bloc.
In Sarawak, former BN parties broke away from Barisan Nasional coalition to form Gabungan Parti Sarawak, or GPS. In Sabah, a similar move led to the formation of a coalition known as Gabungan Rakyat Sabah, or GRS.
After UMNO fell in 2018, there was more openness in terms of discussion because Mahathir promises the 20% oil royalty and our autonomy and so on.
In 2019, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, as Prime Minister, tabled a bill to amend Article 1, Section 2 of the Federal Constitution. This was intended to restore Sabah and Sarawak's status as equal partners with Malaya.
The idea is that when you are equal partners, in terms of development funds, it has to be distributed equally among these three different regions. And in terms of political representation, it should be reflected in that as well.
But this constitutional amendment failed to achieve the 2/3 necessary votes in Parliament. Then, in 2020, a power struggle saw the fall of the PH government. Shifting alliances led to 2 changes in government. Mahathir stepped down after party defections, and Muhyiddin Yassin would replace him to helm the government. When Muhyiddin resigned to avoid a vote of no confidence, Ismail Sabri would take over as Prime Minister. The horse trading of political seats and fragile coalitions gave the East Malaysian states a kingmaker role. So, in 2021, the Sabri administration brought another attempt to restore the status of Sabah and Sarawak. The constitutional amendment passed, taking effect in February 2022.
So because of that, now we are recognized as an entity, a partner, or a region that forms a country, and we are no longer reduced to just any one state like any other state in Malaysia.
It is a legal victory that we are reverting back to pre-1976. What the people of Sarawak Sabah wants is that it's not only legal, it has to be it has to be translated into substantial thing on the ground, on the livelihood of the people.
Negotiating what this equal partnership means now falls on Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. He clinched the premiership after his coalition's victory in the 2022 election. An election which saw the East Malaysian parties capture even more seats, thus becoming a key component of Anwar's ruling coalition.
So that's why today whoever is in the government, whoever is the Prime Minister, must sit down with Sabah and Sarawak.
When you see a weakened federal government, then there is an opportunity for the state government to start to talk about MA63. Maybe you can use the word opportunist, but at the same time, probably you can use the word pragmatic as well. They are both pragmatic and opportunistic at the same time.
In naming his new cabinet, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim appointed Fadila Yusof, a senior leader from GPS Sarawak, as one of his deputy prime ministers, the first ever from a Borneo state. The current administration has also channeled significantly more funds to Sabah and Sarawak.
I think the present government is very generous. Under Anwar, we have billions of ringgit being distributed to Sabah and Sarawak. In fact, even under the leadership of the previous Prime Minister, we seem to be getting more federal funding compared to the other states.
Under the Prime Minister now, things are moving. Yeah, a lot of things has been achieved.
And following a court ruling in March this year, the Sarawak state government has been allowed to impose 5% sales tax on oil and gas products generated in the state.
And because of that, we have additional revenue of 3 or 4 or 5 billion a year.
Still, the East Malaysian states are pushing for more autonomy to manage their affairs. They want to restore some of the original devolution of powers in the Malaysia Agreement.
For instance, in terms of health autonomy, for instance, the building of clinics, hospitals. So we want to have more say in that, because we know where to build the hospital, when to build the hospital, which is our priority, which are the more important things. So that's why we want to have autonomy and decentralization of power to the state in relation to education and health also.
The East Malaysian states are also pushing for more representation at the federal level. Currently, Sabah and Sarawak have a combined 54 seats in Parliament, about 25%. The two states want this number to increase to 35%.
I think it's a fair request, because when Singapore left, the parliamentary seats that belong to Singapore should be divided between Sabah and Sarawak to maintain the quota, to maintain the 35%.
The problem with that position, and again I say this just from my own personal point of view, is the constituent documents don't support this. They don't say there is an entitlement of this nature.
Sabah and Sarawak only have 17% of the population of Malaysia. Should they have 35% of seats? But then what about the erosion of democratic rights when it comes to representation by population? These are the issues that need to be discussed.
As such calls for greater autonomy grow louder, how much can the federal government acquiesce to East Malaysia's demands? Peter Jaban is a proud Sarawakian of Iban heritage. The Ibans are the indigenous people in Sarawak.
So the indigenous people of Sabah suffered now, you see, because of the migration of those who came from other countries, you see. Our immigration, make sure it's being controlled. We don't want any outsiders to suka-suka or simply come into Sarawak or to work here, because Sarawak is for Sarawakian. That's in the that's in the Malaysian Agreement, you see, that we must protect Sarawak.
Peter is the founder of the group Saya Anak Sarawak, which means I am a child of Sarawak. The group champions a Sarawakian identity and is fighting for the restoration of autonomy under MA63.
All these people in the West Malaysia, they always thought that they are the people, Malaysia belongs to them, especially now you look at what happened in West Malaysia. They always talk, this is Tanah Melayu, Tanah Melayu. Malaysia, they said Malaysia is Tanah Melayu. And what we Sarawakians said, hey, Malaysia is not Tanah Melayu. It's Malaysia belongs to all Malaysian, including the Chinese, the Indian, and even the Dayak, the natives here. There are many things that make us very unhappy because we are being sidelined for more than 50 years or ever since the formation of Malaysia. We don't ask for more, we don't ask for less. Just give us what you promised us.
Still, Sarawak had succeeded in pushing for more autonomy in recent years. It achieved this because the state is largely ruled by one dominant party, Gabungan Party Sarawak, which was able to negotiate with the federal government on a united front. Across the border, in the state of Sabah, things are different. Multiple parties will contest in the state elections on November 29th. At the federal level, the main Sabah parties, GRS, Warisan, and BN, are all part of the ruling coalition. But at the local elections, they are rivals for state legislature seats. MA63 and the questions of autonomy have become key campaign issues.
That election is like a referendum, whether you want to continue existing system with the federal dominance and control continues, or you want to be like Sarawak. You want to be free of this entanglement, control, so that you can grow and contribute faster to the development of the nation.
What I'm afraid of is some irresponsible politicians will use the anti-Malaya sentiment to further their cause. When you do it in an irresponsible way, then it will trigger off many unpleasant feelings amongst the people, and therefore distort the harmony, distort the unity in the country, and destabilize the political situation for the whole country.
In any case, questions around MA63 have gained increased attention in East Malaysia. More ordinary citizens like Irwan Idris are taking an interest in it. The 45-year-old digital marketer founded Club Kembara, or Adventure Club, in 2019. What began as his passion to showcase Sabah's lesser-known sites evolved into a deeper interest in the state's history, and with it, his conviction to assert the state's rights.
I want the federal government to respect what actually being agreed, what actually being put in the constitution as the supreme law of the country. So don't make the Sabahan as if like we are begging for new things. It's not new things, it's there. So same goes to the state government. They should be the one, the voice for Sabahan. We just want them to respect the agreement.
Like other Sabahans, the state's underdevelopment motivates his activism.
You can see the road, you can see the electricity here, you can see the water problem. The youth need to go KL to find jobs. As we know, there is 200 to 300,000 Sabahan in KL now.
The current administration has gone further than preceding governments to resolve the disagreements in MA63. Through the MA63 Implementation Action Council, the government says it has settled a number of issues, ranging from land rights to more autonomy over labour and energy.
This government has done quite well in terms of fulfilling 9 demands of the MA63, but the major demands of that will be difficult to fulfill. For example, in terms of royalties from petroleum production. Federal Constitution Article 112 says that every state in the Federation is entitled to 10% of the mineral rights extracted in its own territory. Petronas has given only 5% over the years, but now they're asking for 20%. So, what is the right figure? So it's up to the compromise, up to the discussions, negotiations between the federal government and also Sabah and Sarawak.
However, a number of items, especially those concerning revenue, remain difficult.
There are a lot of issues still that is being negotiated, and the other requests like autonomous dealings, for example, fishery rights, and a lot of powers has been transferred to the central government, and that's what we fighting for. For example, development funds.
These things are a matter of negotiation to a large extent, because you're talking about maintaining the harmony of the arrangement. But at the same time, there has to be a give and take.
And now, as the Sabah election draws the focus on MA63 once again, Prime Minister Anwar has urged stakeholders to avoid going to war over MA63 negotiations.
Nanti timbalan Perdana Menteri 2, Datuk Seri Fatihlah untuk pengurusikan technical committee dan SPK badan. Ada masalah, bincang, ini setuju, jalan, ini belum setuju, nanti ini boleh lagi. Itu cara kita dalam kerjasama kita, bukan untuk berperang.
So this is an ongoing process. Sometimes I said to people, if it takes forever, then forever it is. Of course, people will not be happy with that kind of statement, but this is an ongoing process. And the best way to settle any issues is to sit down and discuss and diplomatically settle matter.
The federal government has said it will not appeal the Kota Kinabalu High Court decision regarding the arrears of 40% of Sabah's revenue. However, it will appeal the language of the ruling, which accuses the government of wrongdoing.
If they had not put out a statement saying that they're not going to appeal, then all the Malaya-based parties in the upcoming Sabah elections will be in big trouble. And this includes Anwar's own party, PKR. So they were forced to issue a statement saying that we're not going to appeal the 40%, but we're going to appeal on the grounds of the judgment. So many people believe that when the AG file an appeal on the grounds of the judgment, then the entire verdict of the 40% will be discarded. So many people believe that this will happen after the Sabah election.
The government, however, has given assurance that it will honour Sabah's 40% revenue entitlement.
So we're looking at billions and billions of ringgit, and the federal government simply do not have that kind of money to pay Sabah. And also, they're very worried that if we start giving Sabah the 40% rebate, which will be the highest among all the states in Malaysia, other states may come knocking on Putrajaya's door and ask for similar consideration. So the major implication for Anwar will really hinge on the results of the upcoming Sabah election, which will be held on the 29th of November. If the incumbent government, the GRS government, gets back into power UNRWA will have an easier time negotiating with them over the 40% issue because they've been working with UNRWA for the past 2 years. If, for example, the state opposition parties like Warisan or SAPP, Stroke Star, if they get into government, then UNRWA will have a harder time because these two parties have made it clear that they will not negotiate anything less than the 40%.
For Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, he will have to balance the demands of East Malaysia with the priorities of the federal government.
Well, hopefully Malaysia will grow into a successful nation, but they have to do a lot of changes. They have to address the inadequacies, the problems that confront us, especially confront with problems related to Sabah, Sarawak.
Going forward, the most important point is, can we get a formula, where Sabah and Sarawak get what they want and the country can have political stability so that they can develop further.
We will work within the bounds of the Constitution, the bounds of the Malaysia Agreement, and within the bounds of the laws that are found within the country. We will fight for our rights within the context of Malaysia.